When we talked about installing apps from the Windows Store, we saw something about permissions. Apps that you install, and even apps that come bundled with Windows, might need to use specific features of your computer, like your location information or your internet connection, or the built-in camera, or others. For each application that you use, you should be asking yourself whether you're willing to grant that permission. So let's take a look at the settings related to those permissions. Of course, I'm going to go into the Start menu into Settings, and I'll go to the Privacy section. This is where we can control some of our privacy and permission settings. Now, the first section, the section labeled General, gives us some global settings that you might want to read through. And then after that are specific permissions that you can control app by app. So first, let's go to Location. Using your Wi-Fi connection, many modern computers and mobile devices can estimate their geographic location on a map. Here, I have a few options to turn location services off completely on this computer if I want. So first, there's this option with this button that says Change. This first setting allows me to completely disable location data for all user accounts on this computer. Since this is set to On, any user can control their own settings for location data. But if I turn this off, all location data will be disabled for every user account. Now below that, this switch here that's simply labeled Location, this is where I can choose to turn off location data just for this one user account. Now this is the same as going to the Action Center, and I'll need to hit Expand to get all of my quick actions here. This is the same as hitting the Location button here in the Action Center. So we'll see if I turn this off here in Action Center, it turns off here in the settings as well. If I turn it back on here, when I go back to Action Center, it's turned on again. So I can toggle it on or off in either location, and it will affect the other place. Now, if I scroll down even further here, down here at the bottom, I can see a list of the apps on my computer that might use location information. And I can turn that permission on or off for each application. Now, the first time you launch an application that requires the use of your location data, it will ask your permission. If you give an application permission to use your location, that option will be turned on here for that application. And this is where you can go to turn that permission off later if you want. But that's just location. There are other similar permission options here, and applications don't always explicitly ask for those permissions. So for example, I can go over to Camera, and we can decide which applications have permission to use my camera. Now this setting will only be available if you're using a computer or a device that has a built-in webcam. Now I've got the master switch here. I could turn this off and then no application on my computer will be able to use my camera at all. Or I can leave it on, and then down here I see a list of all of the applications that might use my camera. And I could turn off the permissions individually for each app. The same goes for microphone. Do I want applications to have access to my microphone, or access to my address book, or my calendar, and so on? So you should go through these different categories and see what applications have permissions enabled for each of these sections. As you continue to use your computer, applications may ask permission to use some of these features. You can choose to grant those permissions or not. And you can always come here to your computer settings to turn off those permissions. So I think the big takeaway here is that you should check the permissions in the settings just to make sure that your applications are not using components of your computer that you don't want them to use. Clearly, if an application can access your camera, your location, your contacts, or your location data, this could be a privacy issue. So make sure you look at these settings and get them set the way you want.